Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome you to next Wasteless World Talks with Bill McLean. And because there is a shore before Christmas, and everybody would like to eat something really delicious, we will cook it for you with Bill. I'm not sure if you will like the discussion about food or not, but I am sure about one: it will wake you up. So, how was your week, Bill, just shortly before the Christmas?
Michael, I've had a wonderful week. I met with friends yesterday who are all looking at the future. We had a wonderful conversation. Those meetings wake me up. They open doors that in my own little mind I deal with these little things, and then I get with them, and an hour later I've got all these open doors that I need to go explore. What food. So we are looking at waste from a number of different angles, but with the approach of taking it industry by industry. And we've selected a half dozen industries. Healthcare and education were of course the top on the list because they're very large and very entrenched. And we look at the change that's arriving, or the change that there might be in 10 years. We've added a new industry to that, and I know so little about this industry that everything is new to me. And that industry is food and agriculture. And we started thinking about food maybe a year or two ago, before this awful situation in Ukraine, and the oil problems and so on. I started hearing about growing food in laboratories. I started hearing about food that does not have an animal base but tastes like it does. I started hearing about, and of course, we'd always talked about waste. You go to a restaurant, they bring you a bowl like this. And I've started asking the waiters or the managers, if I can find them, to please offer maybe like a kid's portion, or call it maybe I don't like the word senior, although I am one, um, but smaller portions, because I end up bringing it home, what's left over, and oftentimes a week later I throw it out. So it's a terrible waste, and I think that your philosophy, Michael, is that the leaders are not going to do this. The giants, the people who are in charge, are not going to do this, and the only way to really get it done is for you and I to do it, and the next guy, and the next guy. And so every restaurant I go into, I ask them two things. They don't like to see me coming in. I ask them to have smaller portions available. I don't even care if they charge the same amount or just a little bit less. I don't care. This is not a economic thing. This is a waste thing. So I ask them for smaller portions, and I also ask them, on my doggy bag that you're going to give me to take home in the package, please do not use plastic or styrofoam. There are packaging for those small boxes and so on that are made out of paper, or made out of cardboard, or something that's biodegradable. And most of them just look at me like I have two heads. Like, where did you come from? Why did we even let you in? So the more that I thought about this, and then on LinkedIn, I'm seeing articles. And a couple of days ago, I saw an article by a lady who is the Chief Motivation Officer, good title, Never heard that one before. Of a company called Change Foods. And I was immediately intrigued with the name, much like the name that you have of Wasteless World. It's a great name. And when I looked them up, the only food that they make right now is cheese. Um, but I can see they're a fairly new company, and so they grow the cheese from the molecules. Oh, I can't even tell you how they do it. It's in a lab. Um, and so looking at 2030 for food, also agriculture, because if, for example, let's take a big step. We grow lab beef and chicken, or we um, or we use plant-based products to replicate it, same taste and so on. Of course, it's not going to look like a chicken leg. You get the drumstick, it's not going to look like that. But at any rate, we'll get used to that. Then you don't need cows and you don't need chickens, and the huge amount of land that it takes to grow them, you can control what's in them. You don't need the antibiotics, you don't need the growth hormones, and so forth. So it's a more pure food, and you don't need to be slaughtering animals. And the methane from cows, I saw an article the other day where there's more methane from cows than there are from cars worldwide. So it's not an insignificant contribution to the global warming. There's just all sorts of reasons to think that this one's going to take off. And so in 2030, we look at the possibility of having progressed down that path. I don't know that it will be all implemented, but we certainly are going to proceed down that path. That's a very high probability. So I would be interested in your thoughts, Michael. From a European standpoint, you're certainly better read than I am. What will food look like? How will it change in the next 10 years? And especially, what sort of wastes can we be avoiding if we go down this path?
Many questions, interesting questions. I will start a little differently. I just had a few weeks ago, I have a meeting with a producer who make out of mushrooms packaging. It's packaging.
Packaging, like
yes.
Okay.
Well, like the box, as you mentioned, the takeaway box is made out of mushrooms, generally. He dried them, he pressed them, and you make out of it a box. And my first question was, can we eat the box after?
That was my question.
And he said, why not? Generally, the mushrooms are edible. So he has to put something additionally, but he said probably yes. I don't know the recipe, but that's one of the topics. The second one, no matter which producer of the artificial food you speak to, all of them speak about one thing: they will increase the production. They don't ask whether there will be more consumers or less consumers, whether they will solve it or not. They speak about more. And you know how I feel about more without any relation. So I don't feel good about it. I think everything should be in balance. And even this, unfortunately or fortunately, I do not want animals to be killed. That's horrible, just to be eaten. On the other hand, until now, I was not able to live completely without meat because my body simply needs something from the meat. And I was really trying hard, but it didn't work with me fully. But how it will look like, you mentioned in one sentence that it maybe will not look like these chicken drums. It will look exactly the same. If we would like to pretend artificial chicken drum, it will look exactly the same. I have seen fishes which has been not a fish, but you will not recognize it. So they are very good in this. So industries are really, really good in this already now. Even right now, they use more or less something which usually will be wasted, so they turn it in something which can be sold and make it nice, so it looks nice. I think that in the future, in 2030, there will be more balance, which means we will eat both. Who will not want to eat meat, fine, he or she will have a much bigger range to choose from. If you compare the US, many of this new lab-grown food started in the US generally. We are, especially in East Europe, we do not have so many producers and not so many products. You can pick them. They are quite expensive. And this is one of the reasons why the people don't buy it. So I do not say there is no market for that, but at the moment, with the pricing skyrocketing generally, just yesterday I have heard that in average, our food in Europe skyrocket since the beginning of the year by 30% is the average increase. So, it's quite hard for everyone. If the eggs does not cost 3, but 5 or 6, it's really significant. Especially our cousin is based on based on meat, a lot of on meat, on eggs. So it's quite difficult for the people like my mom or dad who are used to eat meat. It's quite pricey, and they cannot go for the lab-grown food. But I think there will be one more direction. And I saw it a few years ago when one of Czech company called Mana called me and asked me for support in logistics. And we have two words for food. One is food, and the second is generally meal or something like that. So we differentiate these two words in Czech language. And they said that they produce food. It's all in general in form like a powder, and you mix it just with water. And with one sack of this powder mixed with water, you have one complete meal. But for me, it's not meal, or it's not food, but it's meal. So it's not. It does not look well. It does not even taste well. It makes you full, and that's all. So I think there will be direction to feed the people, but don't give them the joy of eating, just keeping them surviving. So the biggest audience for this food at the moment, they are sportsmen who need it very fast, drivers in a long distance drivers who need it fast and make it and just drink the lunch generally, they drink it and they are fine. What is interesting for me, when I eat a standard lunch, I am tired after. My body gets tired. But when I try this food from them, I was not tired. And they said to me that this is because let's say the harmful content is not there. They separate in this production, it's in lab generally, they separate all the negatives and let only the positive parts there. And I'm not sure whether it will be good or not. I'm not sure whether I will be missing something. I will recognize firstly when I start to eat it. And this is the risk which I see there, that what will fit you must not fit me. And for sure, it cannot fit everyone, because every one of us is different. but I think we will consume less meat. On the other hand, for example, rice is very water consuming of the water is very big. And even rice is right now very, very, let's say, risky food in a point of the scarcity of water in a development and so on. So just heard a very interesting report about rice, and I was surprised because a lot of people eat rice. Many nations are built on rice. And for example, they try to implement potatoes in China without success. Not that they cannot plant it, they can plant it, but the people don't eat it because they are not used to it. It's something strange, different, does not taste so well as rice. And so I think we will see changes in the behavior. But I would like to reduce the waste. I would like to see the changes in the behavior of the producers, not to produce for quantity, but really matching the quantity of food produced with the quantity of food consumed. And for that, we can use different type of technology, artificial intelligence, advanced planning systems, and many more, because we have this data already available.
So moving on from that, with that as a background, agriculture in general, so the growing of plants, there was one article recently about using drones, that the tractors don't need to have a guy sitting there to go down
Right.
2 miles, turn around and come back 2 miles in the next run, and so on. And so the number of people working on the farms will actually go down. Efficiency will go up because the drones can drive at night. It doesn't have to be just during the day. All sorts of interesting. But when we bring in the waste aspect, then we have to bring in things like the biodiversity. So if I have, instead of having a field with 100 or 1,000 different types of flowers, and the bees pollinating and everything, and now I replace that with 100 square miles of wheat, a single crop, then the discussions about things such as biodiversity, because in the first example with the wheat, there is all sorts of waste, not the shop waste that you're used to, not the time waste that we're talking about, but the waste of our environment, when it is no longer biodiverse, when species are dying out, not when, they are now. And that's a big part of the waste, difficult to quantify. In what we're doing for the upcoming book, we're attempting to quantify different types of waste, which is very challenging. I'm not sure how to quantify the waste of the lack of biodiversity, but we'll think about it. So other ways that agriculture will change in the next 10 years, will start to change in the next 10 years. The waste that we are causing now by our present approaches to agriculture, and there's 100 different aspects of that. When you talk about the labor to harvest, and then that of course brings you in with the immigration issues, because Americans are spoiled. They do not want to go out in the hot fields and bend over and harvest lettuce or harvest. So the only ones that will do it are the ones who are escaping some sort of bad situation in Central and South America, and yet we don't welcome them. The waste of not having a rich society, rich by way of diverse and listening to all sorts of people. There's a waste in there that's going to be even more difficult to to quantify, but almost every place that we look, the way that we're doing things traps us into a corner, right? We get used to doing things, and once we're in that corner, we love to be in that corner because we feel safe. It's the way we've always done it. There's a story about training fleas. You've heard that one, I think. How do you train a flea? You put the fleas in a glass jar, and fleas used to jump this high and this high, but once they're in the glass jar, they can only jump this high, and they get used to only jumping this high, and that's how you train a flea. And in fact, if you make the jar disappear and the fleas no longer are held in by a jar, they still will only jump this high. And so we are a lot like that, going to the same office in the same building for 30 or 40 years, having a job for 30 or 40 years. We're like the fleas. We've been trained and we only jump this high. And so what we need to do is think beyond that. And that's where your programs, Michael, are so important, is it opens those windows, it opens those doors, it explodes the walls so that we can be a part of this world again.
What I think generally, what will change, and I mentioned it in the first answer, will change the way how we approach the agriculture from the perspective of produce volumes. You know, right now, when I take the numbers which I collected, that 75% of all crop is being wasted, you can imagine how, if we stop wasting, how smaller will the fields become. And to be honest, I don't think that in agriculture should work less people. It's right that there will be more machines. But if I have a crop which will be really biodiverse, I will need the people to sort it, to plant it, to take care of it. And the machine will collect it. That's fine. But we have to get back to the biodiversity. And if we really reduce the volumes, and I can tell you, if there is no apple tree in your neighborhood, you will go to the shop to buy the tree, to buy the apples. But when will be there and it will be accessible to you. And once you pick up the fresh apple, you do not want to go to the shop to buy the apple anymore. So which means creating the ecosystem, which means instead of having one big orchard or whatever, having the trees between the people, having the ability to take care and to watch and to pick up the apples. I think that this is the approach. Go more in, let the nature come closer to us and let us go closer to the nature. Because with creating of this environment, we will be really able to do it. And what is great, every of the apple, even from the same tree, will taste slightly different. If you buy it from the shop, usually it's all the time the same, usually no taste at all. It's just called apple, but that's all. It has the structure of an apple, but I don't feel it. When I went last week or the week before to my parents, you know, it's already winter here, but I stopped next to the side road generally, and I know there was a tree and still apples there. So I stopped there, pick up a few of the apples. So delicious that next time I decide to ride the same way, even it's 3 kilometers longer, because there was a tree. And I was hoping that still some apples will be there. So we have to really get back to the origin, or to the roots. In the roots, there has been no shops. There has been simple no shops. There has been nature. Nature have been the biggest shop of all. Just it did not take our money, because at the time there was no money. But it takes our work to have it better, sweeter or whatever to process it. And I think this will be the development.
So when you started with what you were just saying about the tree, I think of my eating an apple from a tree in the middle of the field. I remember the taste of it, but just as much as I remember the taste of it, I remember the sunshine on my head and face. I remember the breeze in my face, and all that goes into the taste. So that when I bite an apple now, oftentimes part of my memory comes back of eating an apple out in the middle of the field, fall afternoon breeze, the company of a good friend, and all that is wrapped into taste. When I go to the grocery store and I get an apple, which was probably picked when it was green, and allowed to ripen as it's being transported to the store, I don't have that same feeling. You made me think of it. That's why I like talking with you, because you make me think of all these uh, other things. You open so many doors, but in the future, what you're talking about may be true. I'm hoping. I'm writing about it to try to spread the ideas. But there are many institutions and types of businesses that will be downsizing are downsizing now. And I'm thinking of things like malls and four-year colleges. And the big thing I'm thinking about as far as agriculture goes is parking garages. So imagine, because of the autonomous vehicles, we no longer need to park our car. And so these very large, multi-story, open to the air parking garages can now become vertical farms. And this does a number of things. One of the things it does is bring fresh fruits and vegetables to the inner city. I don't know how it is in Prague, Michael, but here in our inner cities, they are, in fact, they even have a name for them. They call them fruit and vegetable deserts, because the stores that are nearby are things like the dollar store, Dollar General, where they have such a variety of things and low price. And they have packaged food, but they don't have fresh fruits and vegetables. So there are entire neighborhoods and sections of cities where the kids don't eat fresh fruits and vegetables. And if you can imagine what that does to your makeup of your body, to your thought process, and so on. So if instead, and in cities, every block has a parking garage. Every block has a parking garage. And if you can just imagine 6 or 8 stories of green with produce, and taking that produce off the vines and picking it and gathering it and taking it just to the bottom of the elevator to the street. And now people have, so that is that's one of my dreams.
And generally,
make that happen.
It is very realistic, because the advanced technology is so far that they are able to grow in such a big environment in big quantities. I just would like to show you.
Yes.
These are the 2 apples which I picked last week. Generally 2 trees. They are not perfect, but they taste perfect, and they exactly the feeling of picking it up, one fall of my head on my head, but it was fun. It was really I like it. So this image is right, which means we have to repurpose the existing locations for something different. Why not? You know, there is more and more discussions about flying cars. I don't know why they call it flying car when it has generally no wheels, but let's say it was adopted. But even there is a lot of, and in Japan they start with the first terminal already to build it up, and in Korea generally. And we are speaking about it, the government start to support it, and we spend still hundreds of millions on infrastructure of the roads, which are building new roads, which in a world where there will be more cars flying, no roads will be needed. So there is missing these connections generally, but they are missing. This connection is missing because of this silos, which has been historically established between the different type of industries. So right now, if you speak about vertical gardens, very few people will imagine they can be in a parking lot or in a parking house or anywhere or in a factory. They imagine it's a wall and there is some garden or whatever. So it's really not the image, and this is because of the silos which has been implemented into our heads, and even the owner of the parking garages does not think about it because his business is to park cars in this building. So this is where he make his money. A few years ago, I have seen very interesting project from one of the big US cities. I do not remember which one, sorry for that. But they use, in the evening, they use the parking house for allowing the homeless to sleep inside. Because during the day, there was cars, but in the evening, no cars. Great project. I do not remember, I will find it somewhere, but it's a few years ago. I hope it was successful because even a washrooms was there and everything. So the people need a roof above their heads. And it was such a great project that I was really happy to read about. Not sure how it is running right now. But coming back to the food, so I think that the changes must be made in the minds of the people, in the minds of the owners, breaking the silos again, because it is basic condition for anything. And if we do so, technology is existing, it is here, we can use it.
Right. Right. I agree. And from the vantage point of this year, 2022, it's hard to look at 2030 or 2040 and say what the probability of something like that happening. It's difficult to say. However, if we look around, there are plenty of examples of how things are changing. So, for example, I don't know how widespread in your area are malls, shopping malls.
We are in Czech Republic. We have the biggest space per citizen of shipping malls in Europe. It's in my country.
And how's that working out for you?
Horrible.
I grew up in my parents lived in a town in West Virginia near Pittsburgh, and they had a very vibrant downtown, shops and places and restaurants and people a lot of walking. They had one street all shut off to cars, so it was walking, and some rich people built a mall just outside of town. And there were some very attractive stores there, and downtown became not used, and everybody would get in their car and drive 5 miles out of town, spend the day at the mall, and then what happened 8 or 10 years later is other rich people built a second mall on the other side of town. So now we have a downtown which is wasted. We have a great big mall on one side of town that everybody used to go to, but nobody goes there anymore. because they're all going to this mall, and so that's wasted, right? So what I was starting to say is the malls in this country I've seen are just devastated. Everybody's ordering on Amazon or e-commerce, and so there are more and more stores closing in the mall, which makes the mall less attractive. So they're trying to find ways to repurpose and to re-envision the mall of 2030. And in fact, that's actually happening. So in the mall that's closest to where we live, they are putting housing. They're opening up entire wings of the mall for services such as doctors and lawyers and so on. And so they are repurposing the mall, and they will stumble, they will not be successful and partially successful and so on. But we are learning how to repurpose a mall, and agriculture may play a part in that, because if we now have a community inside four walls, but that community has a need for fresh air, to see the blue sky, and so the malls will be reconfigured so that they have those things, and then it will become a community within a community. And when we look at the other things that are need to be repurposed, like many fewer people are going to college.
We have 1 minute.
Unbelievable. So colleges also will be repurposed, and I think agriculture will benefit from that as well.
Generally, why shouldn't be mall and agriculture and education put into one, merge together? This is exactly breaking the silos. This is what I do understand. Let's make it. We have the space. Okay, let's plant the food there. If the people go there, let's plant the food. Why not to live there? And we can play with the time. Even during the daytime, it's for work. During the nighttime, it will be for sleep. So we can repurpose even not only once, we can repurpose more times. So we will see all of you soon again. Have a nice time, free of waste and wasting in all this time. And we will meet with Bill on the original link again to finalize the discussion. So it was a great time. Have a nice Christmas.